My name is Rachel Harper, 32 years old, and I never thought I'd have to barricade myself inside my own condo to keep my mother out. The banging on my door echoed through my living room as Mom's voice grew more frantic. Rachel, open this door right now. This property belongs to your brother. I have the papers to prove it. My hands trembled as I stared at the mortgage statements spread across my kitchen counter, every single payment made by me alone. The truth wouldn't matter though. She'd already chosen her side. Before I dive into the most heartbreaking betrayal of my life, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever dealt with family drama over property, and subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. Growing up in our middle-class suburban neighborhood in Boston, I always knew where I stood in my family's hierarchy. I was the responsible one, the steady one, while my younger brother Derek was the golden child. 4 years younger than me, Derek could do no wrong in our mother's eyes. Every accomplishment of mine was measured against the potential of what Derek might someday achieve. Rachel got straight A's again, my mom would say to relatives, then immediately add, but Derek is just so creative in his approach to learning. This pattern continued throughout our childhood, my concrete achievements overshadowed by Derek's theoretical potential. When our parents divorced, I was 17 and Derek was 13. The split wasn't particularly dramatic, more a slow fading of whatever connection my parents once had. But the aftermath reshaped our family dynamics permanently. Mom became emotionally dependent on Derek in ways that weren't healthy for either of them. He became her confidant, her emotional support, and increasingly, her partner in decision-making. I remember the day Dad moved out. Mom collapsed on the couch sobbing while Derek comforted her. When I tried to join them, Mom said, "Give us some space, Rachel. Derek understands what I need right now." I retreated to my room, feeling like an outsider in my own family tragedy. After the divorce, Dad remarried quickly and started a new family. His visits became less frequent, then stopped altogether. The child support checks came regularly, but they were deposited directly into Mom's account. None of it ever seemed to benefit me directly. When college applications rolled around, I knew better than to expect financial help. Mom made just enough money as an administrative assistant that I didn't qualify for substantial financial aid, but not enough to contribute to my education. "We just don't have the money, Rachel," she'd say, while simultaneously buying Derek a new gaming system or funding his weekend trips with friends. I worked 3 jobs through college: barista in the mornings, library assistant during the day between classes, and waitress on weekends. Sometimes I'd go 48 hours without sleep, just to keep up with both work and studies. Meanwhile, Derek dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming it wasn't the right environment for his learning style. Mom supported this decision completely. "Derek needs to find his path," she explained when I questioned why she wasn't pushing him harder. "Not everyone is built for traditional education like you are," the implication being that my path was somehow easier, despite the fact that I was working myself to exhaustion. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at FinCore Technologies, a finance software firm in downtown Boston. My computer science degree opened doors that hard work helped me push through even wider. While Derek bounced between retail jobs, still living at home with Mom, I steadily climbed the corporate ladder. Junior developer to senior developer to team lead, each promotion earned through long hours and dedication. Throughout those years, I lived in a tiny studio apartment, with furniture I'd rescued from curbsides. I ate ramen and meal-prepped chicken and rice to save money. Every spare dollar went into my savings account, labeled Future Home in my banking app. This wasn't just about having a place to live. It was about creating security for myself in a family that had never provided it. My best friend Amber warned me early on about my family dynamic. "They're using you, Rach," she'd say after witnessing particularly one-sided family gatherings where I paid for meals while Derek and Mom criticized my choices. You give and they take. That's not how family is supposed to work. I'd defend them reflexively. They're just going through a rough patch, or Derek will figure things out eventually. Deep down, though, I knew Amber was right. I just wasn't ready to face what that meant. 5 years of saving, 5 years of saying no to vacations and new clothes and dinners out, 5 years of watching my brother continue to live rent-free with mom, working just enough to fund his hobbies and social life. 5 years of listening to mom talk about how Derek just needs the right opportunity to show his potential. And then finally I had enough for a down payment. Not on anything extravagant, but on a modest 2-bedroom condo in a developing area of the city. The monthly mortgage would be less than my rent had been, and the property had potential to appreciate as the neighborhood improved. Most importantly, it would be mine. Something no one could take away from me. The day I closed on the condo was the proudest day of my life. I stood in the empty living room, keys in hand, and cried with the knowledge that every square inch had been earned through my own efforts. I hosted a small housewarming party 2 weeks later. Mom and Derek came, along with Amber and a few work friends. Mom seemed happy for me, bringing a houseplant as a gift. Derek wandered around the space, making comments about what he would have done differently. "This wall should have been knocked out," he said, tapping a perfectly good living room wall. "And these countertops? Definitely would have gone with granite. Not this cheap laminate." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that his opinion didn't matter. This was my home, purchased with my money, and I loved it exactly as it was. Looking back, I should have noticed the strange comments Mom started making after that day. Little things that didn't quite make sense at the time. "We should discuss how to keep things fair in the family," she mentioned during a Sunday phone call. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, you have property now, and we need to make sure Derek isn't left out." I laughed it off. When Derek saves up for his own place, he won't be left out either. The conversation moved on, but similar comments kept coming. References to family property and questions about my mortgage details. I dismissed them as Mom's awkward way of showing interest in my life, but there was something unsettling brewing beneath the surface. Around this time, I received a promotion at work, project manager for a major new financial application. The salary bump was significant, and though I didn't broadcast the details, I did mention the promotion at a family dinner. Derek's reaction was immediate and telling. "Must be nice to have everything handed to you," he muttered, pushing food around his plate. "Handed to me?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I've worked at FinCor for 7 years, Derek. This promotion was earned." "You always did have all the luck," Mom chimed in, patting Derek's hand. "But don't worry, honey. Your time will come too." I sat there, dumbfounded by the complete denial of reality I was witnessing. In that moment, I should have recognized the warning signs of what was coming. Instead, I did what I'd always done, swallowed my frustration and changed the subject. Later that night, Amber called to ask how dinner went. "The usual," I said, trying to sound casual. Mom praising Derek for existing and Derek resenting me for working hard. "Rachel," Amber's voice turned serious, "I don't have a good feeling about this. The way they've been acting since you bought the condo. It's not right." "They're just adjusting," I insisted. "It's weird for them to see me succeeding on my own." "Maybe," Amber conceded, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. "Just be careful, okay? Not everyone wants to see you win, even if they're family. Especially if they're family." I should have listened more carefully to her warning. Instead, I dismissed it as overprotectiveness from a friend who had always been skeptical of my family's treatment of me. How could I have known that within weeks, my own mother would be standing at my door with fraudulent papers, trying to steal the home I had worked so hard to secure? How could I have predicted that my own family would become my worst enemies? My promotion at FinCor came with a significant salary increase, and I decided to celebrate with a small dinner party at my condo. I invited Amber, a few colleagues including Benjamin from the development team and Patricia from legal, and my neighbor Sophia, who had become a good friend. I deliberately didn't invite my family for once, I wanted to celebrate my achievement without Derek's sulking or Mom's backhanded compliments. The evening was going perfectly. I'd prepared my signature lasagna, opened a nice bottle of wine, and was actually enjoying myself when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Surprise! Mom's voice sang out when I opened the door. Derek stood behind her, hands in his pockets, looking around my entryway with a critical eye. We thought we'd join the celebration, Mom continued, brushing past me into my living room. After all, family should be together for important moments. I stood frozen by the door, uncertain how to react. I hadn't told them about the dinner party specifically to avoid this situation, which meant they had either been speaking to someone I knew or had simply shown up unannounced on the assumption I'd be home. Mom, I wasn't expecting you, I managed, closing the door after Derek sauntered in. Clearly, she replied, eyeing the table set for 6. But we're here now. Derek, grab those chairs from the corner for us, will you? My carefully planned evening shifted awkwardly to accommodate them. Amber shot me sympathetic glances while my colleagues tried to navigate the sudden tension in the room. Derek barely participated in conversation, instead wandering around my condo with unusual interest, opening closets and cabinets as if conducting an inspection. Looking for something? I finally asked when I caught him taking photos of my bedroom. Just checking out the place, he replied casually. This area is really coming up in value, you know. How much do you think this place is worth now compared to what you paid? Before I could answer, Mom chimed in from behind me. Real estate is such a good investment. The whole family benefits when one of us makes smart financial moves. The comment hung in the air, odd and vaguely threatening. Amber cleared her throat and announced it was getting late, providing an escape route for my guests who quickly made their excuses and departed. I couldn't blame them. Once we were alone, Mom settled onto my sofa as if preparing for a serious discussion. Derek perched on the arm beside her, a united front. Rachel, we need to talk about this property, Mom began, her tone businesslike. What about it? I asked, gathering wine glasses to keep my hands busy. Well, as you know, I helped you tremendously with your college application process. I paused, glasses in hand. You proofread my essays. That had been the extent of her help, a single evening of grammar checks. I guided you through the entire process, she corrected firmly. And that education led directly to your career, which led to this condo. So in a very real way, I contributed to this purchase. I set the glasses down carefully, afraid I might drop them as anger flared through me. Mom, I worked 3 jobs through college. I paid every cent of my tuition. I saved for years for the down payment. You did not contribute financially to any of it. Family contributions aren't always financial, Rachel, she said with a wounded expression. Derek and I have supported you emotionally throughout your journey. And speaking of financial contributions, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Derek actually did contribute financially, though you seem to have conveniently forgotten. What? I was genuinely confused. Derek had never given me money for anything, quite the opposite. $50,000, Derek stated flatly. For the down payment. I actually laughed. It was so absurd. That's completely untrue. I can show you my bank statements right now. Every penny came from my savings. Mom unfolded the paper, which appeared to be some kind of receipt or statement. This shows otherwise. Derek liquidated his investment account to help you. And now you're acting like this place is yours alone. I snatched the paper from her hand. It was a statement from a bank I didn't even use, showing a withdrawal of $50,000 with a memo line that read Rachel Harper Condo Investment. This is fake, I said flatly. I've never seen this before. Derek has never given me money. Family helps family, Mom insisted, ignoring my statement completely. And now that you're doing so well with your promotion, it's time for you to help Derek. He's been thinking of moving out, and this place has plenty of room. The reality of the situation hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just visiting, they were making a claim on my home. Let me be absolutely clear. I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. I paid for this condo entirely by myself. Derek did not contribute a single cent. I have all the documentation to prove it, and there is absolutely no way he is moving in here. Derek rolled his eyes. Always so selfish, Rachel. I always believed in you, supported your dreams. Don't I deserve something for that? Believing in me, which you never actually did, doesn't entitle you to my property. I responded, moving toward the door. I think you both need to leave now. Mom's expression hardened. We're your family, Rachel. We're just trying to make things fair. If you insist on being difficult about this, we can settle it legally. Please do, I replied, holding the door open. I would love to see you explain your fraudulent document to a judge. As they walked out, Mom turned to deliver her parting shot. You've changed, Rachel. Success has made you forget where you came from and who was there for you. This isn't over. The moment the door closed, I sank to the floor, my hands shaking so badly I could barely pull my phone out to call Amber. They want my condo, I told her when she answered, my voice hollow with disbelief. They actually created fake documents showing Derek contributed to the down payment. Oh my God, Amber breathed. Rachel, this is serious. They're not just being annoying, they're committing fraud. What do I do? I asked, feeling more lost than I had at any point in my life. They're my family, but they're trying to take everything from me. First, you document everything, she said firmly. Every payment, every conversation, everything. Then you talk to a lawyer. And Rachel, you need to understand that real family doesn't try to steal from you. What they're doing isn't love, it's exploitation. As I hung up the phone, I looked around my condo, the place I'd worked so hard to obtain, the symbol of my independence and success. In a single evening, it had transformed from sanctuary to battleground, and the people I should have been able to trust most in the world had just declared war. The morning after Mom and Derek's ambush, I called in to work for an emergency personal day, something I'd never done before. My boss Nathaniel sounded concerned but didn't press for details, simply saying, "Take the time you need, Rachel. Your projects are in good hands for a day." With shaking hands, I made a list of what I needed to do. First, gather evidence. Second, understand what legal risk I might be facing. Third, secure my property and information. I started by pulling out all my financial records. Bank statements showing my systematic savings over 5 years. The down payment withdrawal from my personal account. Every mortgage payment made from my checking account. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Condo Proof and scanned every document. Next, I called Patricia from the legal department at work. We weren't close friends, but she'd been at my dinner party and had witnessed part of the uncomfortable scene with my family. I felt I could trust her professional discretion. "This is absolutely serious," Patricia said after I explained the situation. "What they're suggesting, falsely claiming financial contribution to property, is fraud. And if they're creating fake documents, that's forgery. What should I do?" I asked, my mouth dry with anxiety. "Document everything, which you're already doing. Don't communicate with them except in writing, text or email, so you have records. And I hate to say this, but you should consult with a real estate attorney immediately." She recommended a colleague who specialized in property disputes, promising to text me his contact information. "Rachel," she added before hanging up, "be careful. Family disputes over property can get very ugly very quickly." My next call was to my bank, where I spoke with the branch manager to verify my mortgage details and confirm the source of all payments. She agreed to provide a formal letter confirming that all payments had come solely from my accounts and that there were no co-signers or co-investors on the mortgage. "Is there any way someone could claim partial ownership without being on the mortgage?" I asked her. "If they could prove they contributed financially to the purchase, they might have a case for what's called a constructive trust," she explained. "But they would need genuine evidence, not just claims." I thanked her and made a note to bring this up with the attorney. Midway through the morning, I received a text from Benjamin, my colleague from the development team. Hey Rachel, weird question. But did you authorize your brother to call asking about your salary details? HR just flagged it to me since we work directly together. My blood ran cold. Derek was digging for information about my finances. I immediately called our HR department to alert them that no one should be given any information about my employment or compensation. Then I called Benjamin back to thank him for the warning. No problem, he said. Seemed super sketchy. He claimed he was helping you refinance your mortgage and needed verification of income. That's a complete lie, I told him. He's trying to gather information to use against me. Benjamin was quiet for a moment. Rachel, I don't want to overstep, but if you need any help with cybersecurity, making sure your accounts are locked down, checking for identity theft, that's kind of my specialty. I gratefully accepted his offer, and he talked me through setting up two-factor authentication on all my accounts, checking my credit report, and placing a fraud alert with the major credit bureaus. Around noon, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Rachel Harper. A professional female voice asked. Yes. Speaking. This is Meredith Johnson from First American Notary Services. I'm calling because there seems to be some confusion about documents notarized at our office 2 weeks ago. Your mother indicated you would be present for the signing, but according to our records, you never appeared. My stomach dropped. What documents are you referring to? A property agreement regarding a condominium, she replied. The paperwork was prepared, but when you didn't show up, we couldn't proceed with notarization. I'm calling to reschedule. I never agreed to any such meeting, I said firmly. And I have no intention of signing any property agreement with my mother or brother. There was an awkward pause. I see. Well, perhaps there was a misunderstanding. I'll make a note in our files. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen counter, trying to process what I'd learned. My mother and brother had tried to create notarized documents about my condo documents I had never agreed to. How far were they willing to go? In the afternoon, I met with James Wilson, the real estate attorney Patricia had recommended. I brought my folder of evidence and explained the situation from the beginning. Unfortunately, this type of family property dispute is more common than you might think, he said after reviewing my documents. The good news is that you have meticulous records proving your sole ownership. The concerning part is that your family seems prepared to create fraudulent evidence. What's my next step? I asked. First, we send a cease and desist letter making it clear that any claims against your property will be vigorously defended and that you have evidence of their attempts at fraud. Often, that's enough to end these situations when the claiming party realizes they can't win. I nodded, though I doubted a legal letter would deter my mother when she had her mind set on something. Second, he continued, we file a declaration of homestead, which provides additional legal protection for your primary residence. And third, we prepare to defend against any legal action they might take, though based on what you've shown me, they would have very little chance of success in court. As I was leaving his office with a plan in place, I received a text from my Aunt Grace, my mother's sister whom I rarely heard from. Rachel, can we talk? I'm hearing concerning things from your mother about your property situation. I called her immediately, bracing for another family member taking Mom's side. Rachel, I want you to know that I don't believe what Diane is saying, Aunt Grace said without preamble. She's telling everyone that she and Derek invested in your condo and now you're trying to cheat them. Relief washed over me. None of that is true, Aunt Grace. I know, she said softly. Your mother did the same thing to me years ago with Grandma's house. Claimed she had been promised it because she was the caretaker. Created all kinds of drama and turned the family against me. I just want you to know that you're not alone, and not everyone believes her stories. Tears sprang to my eyes at this unexpected support. Thank you. That means more than you know right now. Stand your ground, Rachel. Document everything. And remember that those who truly love you don't try to take what's rightfully yours. By the end of the day, I felt both exhausted and more prepared. I had spoken with my bank, consulted an attorney, secured my financial accounts, and even found an unexpected ally. I also made one final stop on my way home, a security store where I purchased cameras for my condo entrances and new, more secure locks for my doors. As I installed the security equipment that evening, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from my mother. "We need to discuss the property situation like adults. Derek is very hurt by your attitude. Family helps family. Rachel, you've always been selfish, but this is beyond acceptable." I didn't respond to any of them, following Patricia's advice to communicate only when necessary and always in writing. Instead, I forwarded the messages to my attorney and to the folder I was creating of evidence. That night, I struggled to sleep, jumping at every sound outside my door. The place that had been my sanctuary, my achievement, now felt vulnerable. But as I finally drifted off, one thought kept me grounded. This was my home, purchased with my money, and I would not let anyone take it from me, even if those people shared my blood. A week after my family's initial confrontation, I returned home from a grueling day at work to find the lights in my condo already on. Panic seized me as I stood frozen in the hallway. Had someone broken in? Then I heard familiar voices from inside Mom and Derek. The emergency key. I had given Mom a spare key when I first moved in, for emergencies only. I never imagined she would use it to enter my home without permission. I pushed the door open to find them in my living room. Derek was measuring the wall with a tape measure while Mom made notes on a clipboard. "What the hell are you doing in my home?" I demanded, dropping my bag on the floor. Mom barely glanced up. "Oh, Rachel, good timing. Do you think this wall is load-bearing? Derek thinks we should open up this space to create more of a great room concept." I stared at her in disbelief. "You are not renovating my condo. You do not live here. You do not own this property. You need to leave immediately." Derek rolled his eyes. "Still playing this game, huh? Look, we're trying to be reasonable here. This place could be so much nicer with some updates." "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with rage. Now, Mom set down her clipboard with a theatrical sigh. "Rachel, this hostility is completely unnecessary. We're family. This property should benefit all of us. I paid for every square inch of this place myself," I said. "Every mortgage payment comes from my account. There is no we in this situation." "Always so selfish," Derek said, shaking his head. "You know, everyone thinks you're this perfect, self-made success story. But they don't know how Mom and Dad always favored you." I laughed out loud. The claim was so outrageous. "Favored me? Are you serious? Mom has spent your entire life telling everyone how special and talented you are while I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. You had opportunities I never had," Derek insisted. "You owe me for that." "I don't owe you anything," I said, pulling out my phone. "Especially not the property I purchased with my own money. Now, get out, or I'm calling the police." "You would call the police on your own mother?" Mom asked, her voice rising to the wounded, quavering tone she used when she wanted to make me feel guilty. "Yes," I said firmly. "I would call the police on anyone who entered my home without permission and refused to leave when asked." "After everything I've done for you," she continued, tears forming. "I raised you. I sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay me? By tearing this family apart with your selfishness?" "You're the one tearing this family apart by trying to steal my property," I replied, dialing 911 and putting the phone to my ear. Mom's demeanor changed instantly when she realized I was actually making the call. Her tears dried up, and her expression hardened. "You'll regret this, Rachel. There are ways to resolve this that will be much more unpleasant for you." I spoke clearly to the 911 operator. "I need police assistance. There are people in my home who entered without permission and are refusing to leave." Derek gathered up his measuring tape, muttering under his breath about ungrateful sisters. Mom collected her clipboard and purse, maintaining her glare. "Family is supposed to help each other," she said as they moved toward the door. Your father and I clearly failed in teaching you that basic principle. Family doesn't create fraudulent documents to steal property, I responded, holding the door open for them to leave. They were still in the hallway outside my condo when two police officers arrived. Officer Jordan, a middle-aged man with a patient expression, took initial statements while his younger partner, Officer Collins, stood by observing. She's overreacting, Mom told Officer Jordan, tears flowing freely again. This is a family misunderstanding. My daughter is going through some emotional difficulties right now. That's not true, I interjected. They entered my home without permission using an emergency key. They've been creating fraudulent documents claiming my brother contributed to the purchase of this property, which he absolutely did not. It was a verbal agreement, Derek said smoothly. I trusted my sister and didn't get everything in writing. That's my mistake. Officer Jordan looked between us, clearly trying to assess the situation. Do you have proof of ownership, ma'am? He asked me. Yes, I replied, retrieving my folder of documentation. Here's my mortgage agreement, showing I'm the sole owner. Here are bank statements showing all payments have come from my personal account, and here's the contact information for my attorney, who is handling this matter. The mention of an attorney caused Officer Jordan's eyebrows to raise slightly. He examined my documents while Mom continued her performance of the heartbroken mother. I just want what's best for both my children, she said, dabbing at her eyes. Rachel has always been difficult, competitive with her brother, unwilling to share. I bit my tongue, knowing that engaging with her narrative would only make me look emotional and unreliable. After reviewing my documents, Officer Jordan handed them back to me. Based on these records, this appears to be your sole property, Miss Harper. Miss Harper's mother and brother, I'll need to ask you to leave the premises and return any keys you have to the property. But Mom began. If there's a property dispute that needs to be handled through civil courts, Officer Jordan continued firmly. Entering someone's home without their permission, even with a key, when you are not on the lease or mortgage, can constitute breaking and entering if the owner asks you to leave and you refuse. Derek looked nervous for the first time. We're going, he said, taking Mom's arm. Come on, Mom, we'll handle this another way. As they left, Mom turned to deliver one last line. This isn't over, Rachel. Not by a long shot. Officer Jordan waited until they had entered the elevator before turning back to me. Miss Harper, I strongly recommend you change your locks immediately, and if they return without permission, don't hesitate to call us again. After the police left, I collapsed onto my couch, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. The confrontation had left me physically drained, but I couldn't rest yet. I called a 24-hour locksmith service to change all my locks that night, despite the extra charge for emergency service. While waiting for the locksmith, I did a thorough check of my condo. To my horror, I discovered several items missing from my home office: my birth certificate, the folder containing my college degree and professional certifications, and oddly, my passport. They had clearly been searching for documents during their unauthorized visit. I immediately called my attorney to report the theft and filed a report with the police to document the missing items. Then I checked my office desk more carefully and found something that made my blood run cold. Several pages from my checkbook had been torn out. I quickly logged into my bank account to ensure no fraudulent checks had been written yet, and placed a warning flag on my account. Just as the locksmith was finishing, my phone rang. It was my father, Thomas, who I hadn't spoken with in nearly a year. Rachel, he said without greeting, what the hell is going on? Your mother says you had her removed from your condo by police. She entered without permission and refused to leave, I said wearily. And she's been creating fake documents claiming she and Derek invested in my property. Jesus, he muttered. Listen, I know I haven't been the most present father, but you need to fix this situation with your mother. She's beside herself. Fix it how? I asked incredulously. By giving Derek half of the condo I paid for entirely on my own. Family property should stay in the family, he said, parroting Mom's lines so precisely that I knew they had spoken recently. Your brother needs help getting established, so help him, I shot back. You're his father. Why is this suddenly my responsibility? Don't be difficult, Rachel. You've always been the responsible one. Derek needs more support than you do. In that moment, the pattern of my entire life crystallized before me. I had always been expected to sacrifice for Derek, to understand, to give way, to be the responsible one while he was coddled and enabled. My accomplishments were diminished while his potential was endlessly celebrated. I will not be giving any portion of my property to Derek, I said with finality. And I suggest you encourage Mom to drop this before she faces legal consequences for fraud and theft. Theft, he repeated. What are you talking about? They stole personal documents from my home office today. The police have been notified. There was a long silence. I'm sure there's an explanation, he finally said, though he sounded less certain. Just try to work this out without getting lawyers involved, will you? For the sake of the family. After hanging up, I broke down in tears for the first time since this ordeal began. The locksmith had left, my condo was secured, but I felt completely alone. My own parents were pressuring me to give up my hard-earned property to my brother simply because he wanted it. The injustice of it was overwhelming. I called Amber, who arrived 20 minutes later with takeout food and a bottle of wine. As I recounted the day's events, her expression moved from concern to outright anger. This is beyond toxic, Rachel, she said, pouring me a generous glass of wine. This isn't just annoying family drama, they're actively trying to steal from you and gaslighting you about it. I know, I said, wiping away tears. But they're still my family. How did we get here? How can Mom look me in the eye and claim Derek deserves part of my condo? Because she's been favoring him your entire life, and she doesn't plan to stop now, Amber said bluntly. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I took a deep breath. Fight. This is my home. I earned it. And I'm not giving it up, not even a piece of it, to anyone. Amber raised her glass in a toast. That's my girl. And you're not fighting alone. I'm right here with you. That night, Amber stayed over, sleeping on my couch as a precaution. Despite the new locks, I couldn't shake the feeling of violation. My home no longer felt like the safe haven I had worked so hard to create. Instead, it had become the centerpiece of a family war I never wanted to fight but one I was determined to win. 3 days after the incident with the police, a certified letter arrived at my condo. My hands trembled as I opened it, already suspecting what I would find. Inside was a formal letter from Bradford and Associates, a small local law firm, claiming that I had committed fraud by refusing to acknowledge Derek's substantial financial contribution to my condo purchase. The letter alleged that Derek had contributed $50,000 toward the down payment with a verbal agreement that he would be a co-owner of the property. It demanded that I either add Derek to the deed immediately or reimburse him $75,000, the original amount, plus what they termed fair interest. I immediately scanned the letter and sent it to James Wilson, my attorney. He called me within the hour. This is exactly the kind of intimidation tactic I expected, he said after confirming he'd reviewed the letter. Bradford is a small firm that handles mostly minor real estate transactions. They've likely taken your mother's claims at face value without substantial investigation. What do we do? I asked, pacing my kitchen. We respond forcefully, he said. I'll draft a letter outlining our evidence of your sole ownership, mentioning the police report about their unauthorized entry, and making it clear that any fraudulent documentation will be reported to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. The confidence in his voice calmed me slightly. Do you think they'll back off once they realize we have evidence? It depends on how committed they are to this scheme, he replied honestly. Some people drop the matter when confronted with evidence. Others double down. Based on what you've told me about your mother, I suspect she may fall into the latter category. He was right. The next day, I discovered that Mom had taken her campaign against me public. My cousin Taylor, whom I'd helped with college application essays years ago, called to ask why I was stealing from Uncle Derek. "What are you talking about?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Aunt Diane says you took Uncle Derek's investment money and now you're refusing to let him have his share of the condo," Taylor said. She showed us the bank statements and everything. My heart sank as I realized Mom was spreading her lies throughout our extended family. "Taylor, none of that is true. Derek never gave me money for my condo. I saved for years and paid for it entirely myself." "That's not what Aunt Diane says," Taylor replied doubtfully. "She's really upset, Rachel. She says you've changed." Similar calls came throughout the day from various family members, each repeating some version of Mom's false narrative. By evening, I felt besieged and betrayed on all sides. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Nathaniel waiting by my desk with a concerned expression. "Rachel, can we talk in my office?" I followed him with a growing sense of dread, wondering if my family drama had somehow reached my workplace. "Your brother was here yesterday," Nathaniel said once we were behind closed doors. "He created quite a scene in reception, demanding to see you. Security had to escort him out." I closed my eyes briefly, mortification washing over me. "I'm so sorry, Nathaniel. My family is. There's a situation with my condo. Derek seems to think he's entitled to part ownership, even though I paid for it entirely myself." Nathaniel's expression softened. "Is that what this is about? Look, you don't need to explain your personal matters. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. HR has been notified, and Derek won't be allowed in the building again." "Thank you," I said, grateful for his understanding. "I promise this won't affect my work." "I know it won't," he said confidently. "You're one of our most reliable team members, but Rachel, if you need time off or resources to deal with this, just ask. The company has legal services available to employees, you know." I thanked him again and returned to my desk, feeling both supported and humiliated. The fact that Derek had brought our conflict into my workplace crossed yet another line I hadn't anticipated. During my lunch break, I received a call from the property management company for my condo building. "Miss Harper, this is Thomas from Bayside Properties. We've had an individual claiming to be a co-owner of your unit requesting access and information. I wanted to verify with you directly before proceeding." My stomach dropped. "Who was claiming to be a co-owner?" "A Mr. Derek Harper. He said he's your brother and co-investor in the property." "He is my brother, but he is absolutely not a co-owner or co-investor," I stated firmly. "My name alone is on all documentation for the condo. No one should be given access to my unit or information about it without my explicit permission." "Understood," Thomas replied. "We'll make a note in your file. You might want to provide us with a list of authorized individuals if there are people you do want to allow access." "The only person authorized besides myself is Amber Chen," I said, grateful that the management company had checked before giving Derek access. After work, I met with Sophia Miller, the attorney James Wilson had partnered me with for what was becoming a complex case. She specialized in fraud cases and had taken a particular interest in my situation. "We've prepared the cease and desist letter," she informed me, sliding a document across the desk. "But there's something else you should know. We've discovered evidence that your mother has attempted to forge your signature on several documents." "What documents?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. "Preliminary paperwork for a quitclaim deed that would transfer partial ownership of your property to your brother," she explained. "It hasn't been filed yet, but our investigator found drafts in the files of a notary who reported that your mother and brother came in twice attempting to process property documents." I felt physically ill. They were trying to transfer my property without my knowledge? Is that even possible? With a convincing forgery? "Unfortunately, yes," Sophia said grimly. "Property fraud is more common than most people realize. The good news is we caught it before anything was filed. The bad news is this shows a clear intent to commit fraud, which escalates the seriousness of the situation significantly. What do we do now? We've already notified the notary offices in the county about the potential for fraudulent documents in your name. We're also going to file for a restraining order to keep your mother and brother away from both you and your property. I hesitated. A restraining order seems so extreme. They're my family. Sophia leaned forward, her expression serious. Rachel, family or not, they've demonstrated a clear pattern of escalating behavior: unauthorized entry to your home, theft of personal documents, attempted forgery, harassment at your workplace. These are not the actions of people who have your best interests at heart. Deep down, I knew she was right. The family I had always tried to please, always tried to maintain relationships with despite their treatment of me, had crossed lines I couldn't ignore. But taking legal action against my own mother and brother still felt like a massive, irrevocable step. As if sensing my internal conflict, Sophia added, "The restraining order is a protective measure, not a punishment. It creates legal consequences if they continue to harass you or attempt to access your property. You can always choose not to pursue further action if they respect the boundaries." I nodded slowly, signing the authorization for her to proceed. As I left her office, my phone buzzed with yet another family member's message, this time my Uncle Philip, asking why I was taking legal action against my poor mother. I didn't respond. The narrative had been set in the family, and anything I said would be twisted to fit Mom's version of events. The only path forward was through legal channels, where evidence mattered more than emotional manipulation. That evening, as I parked outside my condo building, I noticed Derek's car across the street. He was sitting inside, watching the entrance. A chill ran down my spine as I realized he was monitoring my movements. I quickly snapped a photo of his car and sent it to Sophia before hurrying inside, constantly looking over my shoulder. Once safely in my unit, I called the non-emergency police line to report the suspicious behavior. The dispatcher took my information but warned that since Derek was in a public space and hadn't directly threatened me, there wasn't much they could do yet. I spent that night with all the lights off, peering occasionally through my blinds to see if Derek's car was still there. It remained until after midnight, when he finally drove away. Sleep was impossible. The sanctuary of my home had been completely shattered, replaced by a persistent feeling of being hunted in my own space. The next morning, I found my car in the building's garage with a long scratch down the driver's side. There were no security cameras in that section of the garage, so I had no proof of who had done it, but the timing seemed far from coincidental. As I took photos of the damage for my insurance company, I received a text from an unknown number. "Just give Derek what he deserves." I forwarded the message to Sophia and added it to my growing file of evidence. The battle for my home had moved beyond legal claims into something darker and more threatening, but rather than frightening me into submission as they clearly intended, each escalation only strengthened my resolve. This condo represented everything I had worked for, every sacrifice I had made. It was the physical manifestation of my independence from a family dynamic that had always diminished me. And I would not surrender it, not to threats, not to manipulation, and certainly not to people who believed they were entitled to the fruits of my labor simply because we shared DNA. The war for my home had begun in earnest, and I was prepared to fight with everything I had. The date for our initial court hearing arrived faster than I expected. 2 weeks after receiving the law firm's letter, I found myself sitting beside Sophia in a small courtroom, waiting for our case to be called. Mom and Derek sat across the aisle with their attorney, a harried-looking man named Lawrence Bradford who kept shuffling through disorganized papers. Mom had dressed for the occasion in a conservative navy dress that made her look like a respectable, concerned mother rather than someone attempting to commit property fraud. Derek wore a suit I'd never seen before, his usual casual demeanor replaced by a serious expression that occasionally slipped into a smirk when he caught my eye. Docket number 47829. Harper v. Harper. the court clerk announced. As we approached the bench, Judge Harris, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, reviewed the preliminary documents. "I understand this is a property dispute between family members," she said, looking over her reading glasses at us. "Miss Miller, please present your client's position." Sophia stood confidently. "Your Honor, my client Rachel Harper is the sole legal owner of the condominium in question. She paid the entire down payment from her personal savings, has made every mortgage payment, and is the only person named on all legal documentation for the property. Her mother and brother have recently made fraudulent claims of financial contribution and attempted to create falsified documents to support these claims." Bradford jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor. My clients categorically deny any fraudulent activity. This is a misunderstanding about a verbal agreement between family members." Judge Harris raised a hand. "Save your objections, Mr. Bradford. This isn't a trial yet. You'll have your turn to present your client's position." When Sophia finished our opening statement, Bradford rose to present Mom and Derek's case. What followed shocked me beyond anything I had anticipated. Bradford produced a folder of documents, bank statements, checks, and receipts, all purportedly showing Derek's financial contributions to my condo purchase. According to these documents, Derek had liquidated investment accounts, taken out a personal loan, and contributed cash payments totaling over $50,000 toward my down payment. I stared in disbelief at the documents being presented to the judge. They were complete fabrications, but they looked convincingly real, professional, detailed, and comprehensive. Furthermore, Bradford continued, "We have photographic evidence of Mr. Harper's substantial contributions to property improvements." He presented a series of photos showing Derek in my condo with tools and building materials. I recognized the photos immediately. They were from a single afternoon when Derek had reluctantly helped me hang some shelves, edited and presented to suggest he had done significant renovation work. "As you can see, Your Honor," Bradford concluded, "this was clearly a family investment with the understanding that both siblings would benefit from the property." When it was Sophia's turn to respond, she approached the bench with our evidence folder. "Your Honor, these documents are fabrications," she stated calmly. "We have the original bank statements showing Miss Harper's down payment came entirely from her personal savings account. We also have statements from her mortgage lender confirming she is the sole borrower with no cosigners or contributors." She then pulled out our trump card, a report from a forensic accountant who had analyzed both sets of financial documents. This expert analysis shows multiple inconsistencies in the documents presented by the defendants, Sophia explained. The account numbers don't match legitimate bank formatting. The transaction dates include weekends when banks don't process such transfers, and there are font inconsistencies indicating digital manipulation. Judge Harris examined our evidence carefully, her expression giving away nothing. "I'm going to need time to review all of these documents thoroughly," she finally said. "This is clearly more complex than a simple misunderstanding. I'm scheduling a follow-up hearing in 3 weeks to allow for complete discovery and expert review of all financial documentation." She looked directly at Mom and Derek. "I must caution all parties that presenting falsified documents to this court is a serious offense with potential criminal ramifications. If I find evidence of deliberate fraud, I will refer the matter to the district attorney." As we left the courtroom, Mom approached me in the hallway, her lawyer trailing behind her with a nervous expression. "Rachel, this has gone far enough," she said, her voice lowered but intense. "Drop this ridiculous case and we can work things out as a family." "There's nothing to work out," I replied evenly. "The condo is mine. I paid for it. End of story." "Why are you being so selfish?" she hissed, dropping the reasonable act. "Derek needs a place to live. You have extra space. What kind of daughter treats her family this way? What kind of mother tries to steal her daughter's property?" I countered. "What kind of brother creates false documents to claim something he has no right to?" Derek stepped forward. "You always had everything handed to you," he said bitterly. It's time you shared some of that good fortune. Before I could respond, Sophia intervened. This conversation is over. Any further communication should go through counsel, and I strongly suggest you reconsider your position before the next hearing, given the evidence we've presented today. As we walked away, Mom called after me. Family helps family. Rachel, your father would be ashamed of you. Those words stung more than I wanted to admit. Would my father be ashamed of me for protecting what was rightfully mine? Or would he be ashamed of Mom and Derek for their deception? Don't let them get to you, Sophia advised as we exited the courthouse. This is a manipulation tactic, plain and simple. I know, I said, though the doubt had already taken root. I just never imagined they would go this far creating elaborate fake documents, lying under oath. People can convince themselves of their own righteousness, especially when money or property is involved, Sophia replied. The good news is that the judge clearly has concerns about their documentation. Our forensic evidence is strong. During the 3 weeks before our next court date, the pressure intensified. Mom organized what she called a family meeting to discuss the situation reasonably. I declined to attend, knowing it would be an ambush rather than a discussion. My cousin Taylor called afterward. Everyone was there, Rachel. Uncle Philip says you're breaking your mother's heart. They showed us all the checks Derek wrote for your condo. Why are you lying about this? Those checks are forgeries, Taylor, I said wearily. Derek never contributed a penny to my condo. But I saw the checks, she insisted. They looked real. That's the point of forgery, I replied. To look real. Did you also see my bank statements showing I paid for everything myself? Well, no, but Aunt Diane was so upset. She couldn't even finish explaining without crying. The emotional manipulation was working on my extended family, just as it had worked on me for years. It was disheartening but not surprising. The most disturbing development came a week before our next court date. Benjamin from work called me on a Saturday morning. Rachel, I need to tell you something concerning, he began. Our cybersecurity team flagged an attempted intrusion into our financial systems yesterday, specifically targeting employee compensation data. Derek, I said immediately, we can't prove it conclusively, but the attempt originated from an IP address associated with a coffee shop near your brother's workplace, Benjamin confirmed. It looks like he was trying to access official records of your salary and bonuses. I thanked Benjamin for the warning and immediately called Sophia to add this information to our case file. The desperation behind Derek's actions was becoming increasingly alarming. What would he do next if this attempt to claim my property failed? The answer came sooner than I expected. When I returned from grocery shopping that afternoon, I found a notice taped to my door from my bank, alerting me that someone had attempted to access my accounts, using my personal information but had been stopped by the fraud alert I had placed. The realization that my own family was willing to commit multiple crimes, forgery, fraud, identity theft, to take what was mine left me feeling violated in a way I'd never experienced before. These weren't strangers targeting me for financial gain. These were the people who were supposed to love and protect me. Family helps family, Mom kept saying. But in her version, the help only flowed in one direction toward Derek, always toward Derek, at my expense. As the second court date approached, I found myself struggling with insomnia and anxiety. The constant state of vigilance was taking its toll on my health and work performance. Nathaniel had been understanding, but I knew my focus was suffering. The night before our court appearance, I sat alone in my living room, staring at the walls of the home I had worked so hard to obtain. Was it worth the battle? Would I ever feel secure here again, knowing what my family was willing to do? For a moment, I considered giving up, not giving Derek the condo, but selling it and moving somewhere my family couldn't find me, starting fresh without the weight of this betrayal. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Amber. Whatever you're thinking right now, stop it. This is your home. You earned it. And tomorrow, you're going to fight for it. She was right. If I ran away now, I would be running forever. This wasn't just about a property anymore, it was about standing up for myself against the people who had taken advantage of me my entire life. It was about breaking a pattern that would otherwise continue indefinitely. With renewed determination, I gathered my documentation for court, carefully organized in the folder Sophia had prepared. Tomorrow would be a turning point one way or another. This phase of the battle would end, and I would face whatever came next. On the morning of our second court appearance, I arrived early to meet with Sophia. We were reviewing our strategy when I saw a familiar face enter the courtroom, my cousin Taylor, whom I'd helped with college applications years ago and who had recently confronted me about lying regarding Derek's contributions. "What is Taylor doing here?" I whispered to Sophia. She grimaced. "Based on the witness list Bradford submitted yesterday, your mother and brother have convinced Taylor to testify on their behalf." A cold weight settled in my stomach. Taylor and I had been close growing up, not best friends, but certainly allies within the extended family. The fact that she had agreed to testify against me felt like yet another betrayal. When our case was called, Judge Harris wasted no time addressing the evidence presented at our previous hearing. "I've reviewed the documentation submitted by both parties," she began, "and I have serious concerns about the authenticity of the financial records presented by the defendants. The forensic accounting report identifies multiple inconsistencies that cannot be explained by simple clerical errors." Mom's attorney looked nervous but pressed forward. "Your Honor, we have additional evidence to present today, including witness testimony that will confirm the verbal agreement between the parties." Taylor was called first. She approached the witness stand looking uncomfortable but determined. After being sworn in, she began recounting conversations she claimed to have heard between Derek and me. "Rachel told Derek she needed his help with the down payment," Taylor testified. "I was there when they talked about it at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. She promised he could live there whenever he needed to, and that it was a family investment." I stared at her in disbelief. The Thanksgiving she referenced had been spent discussing my promotion at work and Taylor's college plans. Derek and I had never discussed property investments, let alone made agreements about my future condo. When Sophia cross-examined Taylor, she was precise and methodical. "Miss Reynolds, you testified that this conversation took place at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Could you tell us who else was present?" Taylor listed several family members, including my Uncle Philip. "And where exactly did this conversation take place?" "In the kitchen, while everyone was cleaning up after dinner." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "Miss Reynolds, are you aware that Rachel was not at the family Thanksgiving 2 years ago? She was in Chicago at a technology conference, which we can verify through her employer's records and flight bookings." Taylor's face flushed. She looked to Mom, who was frantically whispering to her attorney. I might have the year wrong." Taylor stammered. "Or perhaps," Sophia suggested gently, "you were told about a conversation that never actually happened." Taylor's testimony crumbled under further questioning, and she eventually admitted that she hadn't personally witnessed any financial agreements between Derek and me but had been told about them repeatedly by Mom. After Taylor stepped down, looking thoroughly miserable, Bradford called Derek to testify. Derek delivered a performance that would have been impressive if it wasn't so dishonest, portraying himself as the hard-working brother who had trusted his sister with his savings, only to be betrayed when success changed her. "I gave Rachel $50,000 in cash payments," he claimed. "She didn't want any paper trail because she was worried about tax implications. I trusted her because she's my sister." When Sophia cross-examined him, she focused on his financial history. "Mr. Harper, bank records show that the largest balance you've maintained in any account over the past 5 years was $3,742. How did you accumulate $50,000 in cash?" Derek claimed he had been saving cash for years, keeping it in a safe at home. Sophia then presented his credit report showing multiple maxed-out credit cards and a gambling-related debt in collections. "Mr. Harper, Would you explain how someone with significant debt and minimal savings managed to provide $50,000 in cash to his sister? Derek's confidence began to falter. I had other sources of income. Could you specify these sources? I'd rather not, he muttered. Mom was the final witness, and she was the most convincing of all. With tears in her eyes, she described how she had raised us alone after my father abandoned the family, a significant exaggeration of their divorce, how she had always taught us to support each other, and how heartbroken she was to see me turn against my brother. Rachel has changed since she got this promotion, Mom testified. Money has become more important to her than family. All we want is what's fair, what was agreed upon. After court adjourned for the day, I felt emotionally drained. The lies had been so comprehensive, so detailed, that I almost questioned my own memories and experiences. If I hadn't had documented evidence proving my sole ownership, would I have started to believe their version of events? Sophia was cautiously optimistic as we left. The judge clearly has concerns about their evidence. Your documentation is solid. But be prepared, they're going to escalate outside of court before our next appearance. She was right. That evening, I received a text message from a family friend. Just saw your mom. She's in terrible shape because of what you're doing. Is property really worth destroying your family? Similar messages poured in throughout the night. Mom had apparently spent the afternoon calling everyone in our extended family and social circle, portraying herself as the victim of her heartless daughter. The next day, I received a call from Amber. Rachel, don't freak out, but your mom and Derek organized some kind of family intervention at your Uncle Philip's house tonight. They're expecting you to be there. How do you know this? Your cousin Taylor called me. She feels terrible about testifying and wanted to warn you. Apparently, the plan is to get the whole family to pressure you into dropping the case. I declined the invitation, but curiosity and a desire to understand what I was up against led me to ask Amber to attend as my eyes and ears. She agreed reluctantly, leveraging her long-standing relationship with my family to secure an invitation. Later that night, Amber called me from her car, her voice shaking with anger. Rachel, it was horrible. They spent an hour talking about you, like you're some kind of monster. Your mom had everyone convinced that you stole Derek's life savings. But here's the bombshell, your Uncle Philip let slip that your mom has been planning this for months, since before you even closed on the condo. What? I sat down, my knees suddenly weak. He said something about her being smart to set up the paper trail early. And Rachel. Derek admitted he needs your condo to settle gambling debts. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He said some people are getting really impatient and having property to offer would solve his problems. The pieces clicked into place: the urgency, the forged documents, the escalating harassment. Derek wasn't just trying to take advantage of me, he was desperate. There's more. Amber continued grimly. Your mom promised several family members financial consideration if they helped convince you to do the right thing. That's why Taylor testified your mom promised to help pay off her student loans. I thanked Amber for her reconnaissance and hung up, feeling sick to my stomach. My family wasn't just misguided or confused, they were actively conspiring against me, bribing each other with promises of money they didn't have but planned to extract from me. The next morning, I received a notification from my bank about suspicious activity. Someone had attempted to open a credit card in my name using my social security number and other personal details. The bank had flagged it due to the fraud alert on my account, but it was a chilling reminder of how far Mom and Derek were willing to go. Then my phone buzzed with an email notification that made my blood run cold. The sender was a real estate website, congratulating me on listing my property. When I clicked through in panic, I found a listing for my condo, complete with exterior photos and a description, posted by owner Derek Harper. I immediately called the website to have the fraudulent listing removed and contacted Sophia to add this to our growing file of evidence. She advised me to install additional security cameras covering all approaches to my condo, which I did that same day. The stress was taking a visible toll on me. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and began experiencing anxiety attacks at work. After I nearly collapsed during a team meeting, Nathaniel insisted I take a temporary leave of absence. "Rachel, you're one of our most valuable team members," he said kindly. "But you can't perform at your best while fighting this battle. Take the time you need to resolve this situation, and your position will be waiting for you." The company's support was a bright spot in an increasingly dark situation. Nathaniel even offered to connect me with the company's legal department for additional resources, which I gratefully accepted. As our final court date approached, the harassment intensified. Mom showed up at my doctor's appointment, somehow having learned of it from a distant family connection who worked at the medical office. She cornered me in the waiting room, loudly claiming I was mentally unstable and needed family intervention. The office staff eventually asked her to leave when she refused to lower her voice. The most disturbing incident occurred 3 days before our court date. Returning from a rare evening out with Amber, an attempt to briefly escape the stress, I found Mom and Derek outside my building with a middle-aged couple I didn't recognize. "And this is the building," Derek was saying as they gazed up at my floor. "Great investment potential in this neighborhood." They were showing my home to prospective buyers. A check of my security cameras later revealed they had brought 3 different groups to view the exterior over the past week, apparently telling them the property would be available soon. The violation was profound. They weren't just trying to claim my property, they were actively planning to sell it out from under me, treating my home, my sanctuary, as a commodity they already possessed. That night, I reviewed all the evidence we had gathered: the forged documents, the fraudulent listing, the attempted identity theft, the witness intimidation. The pattern was clear. Mom and Derek would stop at nothing to take what was mine. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt something shift inside me. The guilt and confusion that had clouded my judgment began to lift, replaced by a cold clarity. This wasn't about family anymore. This wasn't even about the condo, really. This was about standing up to people who had spent my entire life taking advantage of my sense of obligation and responsibility. As I prepared for our final court date, I made a decision that would forever change my relationship with my family. Whatever the outcome, this would be the last time I allowed them to manipulate, gaslight, or exploit me. The cycle ended now, one way or another. The morning of our final court hearing dawned bright and clear, contrasting sharply with my dark mood. Over the past weeks, I had barely slept, existing in a state of hypervigilance that left me exhausted but unable to relax. Today, however, a strange calm had settled over me. Whatever happened in court, I was ready for this chapter to end. Sophia met me at the courthouse steps, accompanied by our forensic financial analyst and, to my surprise, Benjamin from my workplace. Benjamin agreed to testify about the attempted intrusion into the company's financial systems, Sophia explained. It helps establish a pattern of fraudulent behavior. Inside, the courtroom was more crowded than before. Not only were Mom and Derek present with their attorney, but several extended family members had also shown up, presumably to show support for them. I noticed my father sitting in the back row, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Judge Harris entered, and the proceedings began with our forensic accountant presenting detailed analysis of the financial documents Derek and Mom had submitted. His testimony was technical but damning, pointing out multiple inconsistencies that clearly indicated forgery. The account numbers on these statements don't conform to the bank's actual numbering system, he explained. Furthermore, the transaction dates include federal holidays when banks don't process such transfers, and the font changes subtly in areas where information appears to have been digitally altered. Bradford attempted to challenge these findings but became increasingly flustered as the expert methodically dismantled each objection. By the time the accountant stepped down, even Mom looked worried. Benjamin testified next. explaining in clear terms how someone had attempted to access employee compensation records, specifically mine, using stolen credentials. Our security team traced the intrusion attempt to an IP address associated with a coffee shop located approximately 500 feet from Derek Harper's workplace, he stated. The timing aligned with his lunch break, based on his employer's records. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact with the judge. Our final surprise witness was someone I hadn't expected to see again: my father, Thomas. When Sophia called his name, Mom gasped audibly, and Derek's head snapped up in shock. Dad approached the witness stand looking older than his 57 years. After being sworn in, he cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Harper," Sophia began, "could you describe your understanding of the financial arrangements regarding your daughter's condominium purchase?" "Rachel purchased the condo entirely with her own money," he stated firmly. "She worked multiple jobs through college and saved diligently for years. Derek did not contribute financially to the purchase in any way." "How can you be so certain?" Sophia asked. "Because Derek has asked me for money repeatedly over the past 5 years to cover gambling debts," Dad replied, his voice heavy with resignation. "He has never had the financial means to invest in property." Additionally, Diane, their mother, called me several months ago to discuss what she called Rachel's success and mentioned plans to ensure Derek benefited from it. Mom's face contorted with fury as Dad continued his testimony, revealing that she had explicitly told him about plans to claim partial ownership of my condo for Derek. "I didn't think she would go this far," he admitted, shame evident in his voice. "I should have warned Rachel. But Diane and I have been on such bad terms since the divorce, I didn't want to get involved. That was a mistake, and I'm sorry for it." When Bradford cross-examined Dad, he attempted to paint him as an absent father with limited knowledge of family dynamics, but Dad's testimony remained consistent. He acknowledged his failings as a father while standing firm on the facts of my property purchase. As the evidence mounted against them, Mom's composure finally cracked. During a brief recess, she erupted in the hallway outside the courtroom. "You ungrateful child!" she screamed at me, her face contorted with rage. "After everything I've done for you, your father abandoned us, and I raised you alone. And this is how you repay me?" Security officers quickly intervened, but not before everyone in the vicinity, including Judge Harris, who was walking to her chambers, witnessed the outburst. When court reconvened, Judge Harris's expression was stern. "I've reviewed all evidence presented in this case, and I find the documentation submitted by Diane and Derek Harper to be highly questionable at best, and fraudulent at worst. Rachel Harper is the sole legal owner of the property in question, having provided comprehensive evidence of her financial contributions and legal ownership." She turned her gaze directly to Mom and Derek. "I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into potential charges of forgery, fraud, and perjury. Additionally, I am granting Ms. Harper's request for a restraining order against both defendants." Relief flooded through me, so intense that I nearly missed the judge's final statements about legal costs and future proceedings. We had won. My home was secure. The nightmare was over, or so I thought. 3 days after the court ruling, I arrived home from grocery shopping to find an astonishing scene. Moving trucks parked outside my building, and Mom directing men carrying furniture toward the entrance. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, rushing toward her. "The court ruled in our favor," she said smoothly, showing a document to the building manager who had come out to investigate the commotion. "We're moving Derek's things in today." The document appeared to be a court order, but I immediately recognized it as another forgery, a modified version of our actual court documents with key details altered. "This is fake," I told the building manager, pulling out my phone. "I have the real court order right here, and I have a restraining order against these people. Please call the police immediately." Mom's confidence wavered slightly, but she maintained her performance. "Rachel is confused. The judge clearly stated this is a family property. The building manager looked between us uncertainly until I showed him the authentic court documents on my phone. This is a clear violation of a restraining order, I explained. These individuals are not permitted within 100 feet of me or my property. He nodded and stepped away to call the authorities while I confronted my mother. This is criminal, I said quietly. You're now looking at additional charges for violating a restraining order and attempting to defraud the building management. For a moment, Mom's mask slipped, and I saw something I'd never witnessed before: genuine fear in her eyes. She realized she had crossed a line that couldn't be walked back or explained away. The police arrived quickly, having been notified of the restraining order violation. Officer Jordan from our previous encounter was among them, recognition dawning on his face as he assessed the situation. "Miss Harper," he acknowledged me with a nod before turning to Mom and Derek. "I need to see identification from both of you, please." Mom attempted her tearful mother routine, but Officer Jordan remained professional and unmoved. After confirming their identities and the existence of the restraining order, he informed them they were being detained for violation of a court order. "This is ridiculous," Derek protested as he was escorted to the police car. "She's my sister. This is family business." Family business stopped being an excuse the moment you created fraudulent documents, I called after him, finally finding my voice after years of silent acquiescence. As they were driven away, I stood in front of my building, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. The moving truck drivers, confused by the entire situation, asked what they should do with the furniture they'd brought. "Take it back wherever it came from," I said wearily. "It doesn't belong here." That evening, I filed for an emergency extension of the restraining order, citing the moving truck incident as evidence of continued intent to violate my property rights. The judge granted it immediately, extending the distance requirement to 500 feet and adding specific language prohibiting any communication regarding my property. In the days that followed, the family narrative began to shift. Taylor called to apologize tearfully, admitting that Mom had manipulated her with promises of financial help and emotional blackmail about family loyalty. "I saw the forged documents," she confessed. "Once I knew what to look for, it was so obvious. I'm really sorry, Rachel. I should have trusted you." Other family members started to reach out as well, many having witnessed Mom's courtroom meltdown or heard about the moving truck incident. My Aunt Grace organized a family meeting without Mom or Derek to address the situation honestly. "Diane has been doing this for years," Grace told the assembled relatives. "Creating drama, pitting family members against each other, making false promises. Rachel isn't the first victim, just the most recent." The family support was a welcome change, but it came too late to heal the deepest wounds. I had seen too clearly who had stood with me when it mattered and who had believed the worst without question. A week after the moving truck incident, I received word that Derek had left town abruptly, abandoning his apartment and job without notice. Mom was left to face the legal consequences alone, including potential criminal charges for the forged documents and restraining order violation. Despite everything, part of me still felt guilty. She was my mother. Should I try to help her avoid criminal charges? Was I being too harsh? I brought these questions to my next therapy session, having started counseling to deal with the trauma of the past months. "Rachel," my therapist said gently, "you're not responsible for protecting your mother from the consequences of her actions. That's not what love looks like. Real love respects boundaries and doesn't try to take what belongs to someone else." After careful consideration, I made the difficult decision to permanently cut ties with my mother. I instructed my attorney to communicate that I would not actively pursue criminal charges against her, but I would not impede any legal proceedings either. Most importantly, I would no longer engage in any form of communication or relationship with her. It was the hardest decision I had ever made, but also the most necessary. For the first time in my life, I was putting my own well-being first, without guilt or apology. The property battle had been won, but the greater victory was internal. I had finally broken free from a family dynamic that had diminished me for decades. That night, I slept peacefully in my condo for the first time in months. The nightmare wasn't over. There would be legal proceedings and emotional aftershocks for months to come, but I had reclaimed my home and, more importantly, my sense of self. 6 months after the dramatic confrontation with the moving trucks, my life had begun to stabilize in ways I never imagined possible. The condo that had been the center of so much conflict was finally feeling like a sanctuary again. Though I had made several changes to reclaim the space as my own. I repainted every room, replaced the furniture Mom and Derek had touched during their unauthorized visits, and installed an advanced security system that gave me peace of mind. Sometimes healing requires physical transformation of spaces that hold difficult memories. At work, I not only returned from my leave of absence but thrived. The project I had been leading before the family crisis exploded was completed under budget and ahead of schedule, earning me another promotion to senior project manager. Nathaniel made a point of recognizing my resilience during a team meeting. Rachel has demonstrated extraordinary professionalism during personally challenging circumstances, he announced as he presented me with the company's quarterly achievement award. Her ability to maintain focus and deliver results speaks volumes about her character and commitment. The recognition was sweet, but even more meaningful was the genuine support my colleagues had shown throughout the ordeal. Benjamin had become a close friend, our shared experience of the court case creating a bond that extended beyond the workplace. He often joined Amber and me for dinner, bringing a lightness to our gatherings that helped balance the heavier emotional work I was doing in therapy. Speaking of therapy, it had become an essential part of my healing journey. Weekly sessions with Dr. Melissa Cohen helped me process not just the recent trauma of my family's betrayal, but the lifelong patterns that had set the stage for it. What you experienced wasn't just about the condo, Dr. Cohen explained during one particularly insightful session. It was the culmination of a family dynamic where your achievements were minimized while Derek's potential was celebrated, where your contributions were expected while his were praised, where your boundaries were routinely violated while his were respected. Understanding these patterns helped me recognize them in other relationships and settings, allowing me to establish healthier boundaries across all areas of my life. I learned to say no without guilt, to express my needs without apology, and to value my own well-being as much as I had always valued others. One unexpected development during this period was the tentative reconnection with my father. After his testimony in court, Thomas had reached out with a heartfelt apology for his absence during my formative years and his failure to intervene when he suspected Mom's manipulation. I told myself I was staying out of it to avoid conflict. He admitted over coffee at a neutral location I wasn't ready to invite him into my home yet. But the truth is, it was easier to look away than to stand up to Diane. I failed you, Rachel, and I'm truly sorry for that. His honesty was refreshing. And while I wasn't ready to fully embrace him as a central figure in my life, we established a cautious, more authentic relationship than we'd ever had before. Monthly lunch meetings gradually evolved into more regular communication, with clear boundaries and expectations on both sides. As for Derek, I received sporadic updates through family channels. He had apparently entered a gambling addiction treatment program in another state, a condition of avoiding prosecution for his role in the fraud attempt. I felt a complex mixture of emotions about his situation: relief that he was getting help, lingering anger over his betrayal, and a quiet sadness for the sibling relationship we would never have. Mom's story took a different turn. About 4 months after the court case, I received a letter from her, not directly, as that would have violated the restraining order, but through her therapist, who had contacted my attorney to request permission to forward it. After consulting with Dr. Cohen, I agreed to read it, prepared for another manipulation attempt but hoping for something more meaningful. The letter was disappointing. While it contained the words "I'm sorry," they were buried within justifications, explanations, and subtle accusations. "I'm sorry you felt betrayed by my attempts to ensure family fairness, And I'm sorry you misinterpreted my intentions were not genuine apologies but further attempts to rewrite reality. This is actually valuable, Dr. Cohen noted when I brought the letter to our session. It confirms that maintaining your boundaries is the right decision. There's no acknowledgement of wrongdoing here, just a strategic retreat. I chose not to respond to the letter, instead focusing my energy on rebuilding my life and creating new connections to replace the family relationships I had lost. This included turning part of my condo into a home office for freelance consulting work I had started on the side, a creative outlet that brought additional income and satisfaction. One of my most healing projects during this period was developing a series of financial literacy workshops for young women, inspired by my own journey to homeownership despite family obstacles. I partnered with a local community college to offer monthly sessions on saving strategies, investment basics, and preparing for major purchases. The best revenge is living well, Amber had told me, but the best healing is helping others avoid your struggles. She was right. Each time I guided another young woman toward financial independence, I reclaimed a piece of my own story. Not all family relationships were lost in the aftermath of the court battle. My Aunt Grace became a supportive presence in my life, calling regularly to check in and occasionally dropping by with homemade food or simply to chat. Several cousins, including a remorseful tailor, made efforts to maintain individual relationships with me, respecting my boundaries regarding discussions of Mom or Derek. The most meaningful moment in my healing journey came unexpectedly, about 5 months after the court case. Amber, who had been my rock throughout the ordeal, organized a surprise housewarming party, or rather, a house reclaiming party, as she called it. You never got to properly celebrate this place as your sanctuary, she explained as I stood shocked in my doorway, facing a small gathering of my closest supporters. Amber herself, Benjamin from work, my therapist Dr. Cohen, my attorney Sophia, my neighbor who had checked on me during the worst days of harassment, and even my father, standing awkwardly but hopefully at the back of the group. They had transformed my living room with fairy lights, brought thoughtful gifts to replace items that held negative associations, and prepared my favorite foods. Most touchingly, they had each written notes about what my friendship meant to them and what strengths they had observed in me throughout the ordeal, which Amber had compiled in a beautiful journal. "This is your chosen family," Amber said softly as I wiped away tears. "The people who support you because they value you, not because they want something from you." That night, surrounded by genuine affection and respect, I finally felt the peace I had been working toward for months. My home was truly mine again, not just legally, but emotionally. As I continued to heal, I made one final change to my condo that symbolized my transformation. In the entryway, where I would see it every day coming and going, I hung a beautiful piece of calligraphy art reading "Home is where your story begins." I had commissioned it from a local artist, specifying that the word "your" be emphasized, because that was the most profound lesson of this painful journey. My story was my own to write, not my mother's, not my brother's, not defined by their expectations or demands. My home purchased with my money, defended with my courage, reclaimed with my determination was the physical embodiment of that truth. 6 months earlier, I had stood in my kitchen trembling as my mother pounded on my door, demanding access to property that was rightfully mine. Today, I stood in that same kitchen, making coffee for friends who respected my boundaries and valued my worth. I built these walls twice, first with my savings, then with my strength. Both times, I learned that the most valuable property isn't the one with my name on the deed, but the piece I finally own inside myself. What about you? Have you ever had to defend your boundaries against family members who felt entitled to your success? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more authentic stories about overcoming family challenges. Remember, standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's essential self-care. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you find the strength to protect your own boundaries when needed.